So I'm co-founder of a consultancy called Playfilled. We help organizations transform by igniting purposeful play in their culture. And we work with amazing leaders who aren't afraid to do things differently. And we bring them playful tools and programs, all designed to boost creativity and connection, which really prime people in these organizations for innovation and high performance. But I guess kind of what brought me and Pauline, my lovely co-founder, to do that work was a whole host of factors. But I guess the one that really was at the heart of it was our own personal experiences of work. We're both from very corporate background, insurance, management, consultancy, environments that don't typically invite play into those workplaces. And it just felt like we were missing out on something very, very special in who we are as humans. Creativity is not invited out in us, and therefore we're just missing out on opportunities for real connection and collaboration by shunning this idea of play. We found a whole host of amazing research on what happens when people do play in the workplace, but at the moment it's very, very uncommon that businesses feel confident about bringing play into how they do things. And so we started Playfilled to really change that.
That is so awesome. And I kid you not, my dog is like, let's play fetch right now. I kid you not, it is happening. He's up from his nap. He's staring at me like, let's do it. So when we're not playing with our dog, what do you mean by encouraging play in the workplace? What does that even mean?
To be honest, I think a really good place to start is even just thinking about that word play, because it's a word that we all know. It's very deceptively simple, but play really, when we unpack it, means different things to different people. And I don't know about you, but I feel like there are a lot of myths around the idea and the word play. So what's the first thing we typically think about when we say the word play? It's children, as you say, kind of it's important for kids. That's how they learn. But what about for adults? Not as seen as important for adults. Or maybe it is for some adults, but only for those who are kind of deemed creative or playful by other people. We also tend to think that play doesn't belong at work. I'm sure, the whole work hard, play hard adage you would have heard, or that play has got to look like one thing, and that is playing pranks, telling jokes. That's how play looks. It's just kind of quite homogenous. And all of these myths really need dismantling, because they create stories that we hear and we tell ourselves about playfulness, which mean that individuals and organizations are really missing out on the amazing benefits of more play. So when we talk about play, we're not just talking about being silly. So absolutely, there's always kind of levity and lightness in this idea of play, but seeing it just as being silly kind of trivializes it when it's actually an incredibly powerful force. Play is very critical for health, just like sleep and nutrition. And we would say, Pauline and I, and Playfilled more broadly, that it always has a purpose. And that purpose can be just to have fun in the moment, or it could be to achieve a great outcome in something, just doing it in a way that feels more playful. And play is very closely linked to this idea of flow, when you're kind of very, very present in the moment and you're kind of lost in whatever you're doing. But I guess the key thing when we think about play is this idea that it's actually different for everyone. So it could be a particular activity like hiking a mountain, throwing a ball around, designing a poster, programming, collecting seashells. It can show up through jokes and laughter, like you might imagine when you're talking about play. But it doesn't always look like this. It can look like being lost in a spreadsheet, or painting, or building a model. So I guess the key point is thinking about that word play. It really is kind of different things to different people. It's a very diverse term, which kind of presents as simple, but can mean different things.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love too that you highlighted ones that I identify with play, and then ones that when you're like in a spreadsheet, I'm like, that sounds like the opposite for me. But for some folks, that is play,
Exactly.
right? Like they can
Exactly.
like my partner, he is Mr. Spreadsheet, like spreadsheet for everything, and yet he doesn't remember which day the trash needs to be taken out. And yet you would think there was a spreadsheet for that. It's only three. It's the same every week.
But that's exactly it. It's like, how do you have the language to understand what play is for some that will be completely not your kind of play? It's very diverse.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So is it only things that we like enjoy play, or are there things that like we don't enjoy that are play? Is that what, like when it comes into work, like we're like, okay, I want to bring play to this, say for me, a spreadsheet. Like how do I do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to answer your question, no, it's not just about activities, because often at work we have to do activities, right, that don't feel like play to us. That is part of life. So it's not just about doing things that feel like play. It's also about kind of mindsets and how you can experience something that might not be deemed play by you or by someone else. So by developing a playful mindset, I mean things like cultivating real kind of curiosity. So how, challenging yourself every day to be kind of asking questions, being unafraid to experiment, to learn new things. If you want to work something out, just try it in a small way, understand stuff's going to fail, stuff's going to go badly, but just seek out ways to experiment. Ooh, sorry, gosh, I was experimenting there with my hands and it just kind of spun
a playful
around.
camera angle.
There we go. Yeah, that was very jazzy. But also kind of seeking to build on others' suggestions. So there's a brilliant principle in improvisation called yes and. You may have come across it before. Whereas, often when we're debating ideas with colleagues, our impulse is to say, oh, that won't work because of X, or no, because of Y. And this yes and principle really challenges us to say, or invites us perhaps to say, yes, and yeah, we can do that. And we could mitigate it going wrong by doing Y. So we're kind of building on others' suggestions and being kind of constructive rather than sort of destructive and breaking things down. And this mindset is all around being kind of comfortable with being a beginner, being comfortable with being bad at stuff. That's really hard for me. I like to be good at things, but I have to really bring that playfulness in, kind of reframing problems, holding them lightly. And there are so many amazing examples of, stressful, complex, high stakes challenges which have been resolved through bringing play into the mix in a sensitive way, and just bringing this kind of sense of humanity and vulnerability into those situations, which I can talk more about. So no, it's not just about activities. It's also around a playful spirit and playful mindset that you can bring into situations that might not seem very playful on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. I identify with a lot of what you're saying so far about wanting to be good at something. And so that's also, I think other people share this, like, oh, I won't even do something because I don't want to look dumb or bad, or like I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. But everybody has their first something, right? Yeah. Like it's everybody's first time to lead a meeting or to PowerPoint or to do a spreadsheet or whatever it is. Like we all
way too much spreadsheet chat in this conversation.
But enough about me. One of my favorite drag queen lines I've ever heard is not to make it all about me, but it's just so cold outside of the spotlight.
I'm definitely going to take that.
I offer it up. It's yours now. And I'm curious too, did I come from a performance background too, and you brought up the yes and thing. Were you in acting, or is this something you picked up along the way? Or?
No, I think I'm an enthusiastic amateur, more like musical theatre, so super jazz hands central. But there wasn't a lot of
jazz hands reference you had earlier too. So I'm like,
exactly.
What's happening?
But I definitely I didn't kind of do kind of improvisation work in that at all. No, that was much more through my own journey and kind of using playful methods. But cool. I love that. Yes, and
yeah, great. Yeah, I love that too. And it does. You're right. Absolutely. Like we have this, and I think those are linked, right? Of the, oh, I don't want to do something because I'm not good at it, and the like, no, that won't work. Like I feel like they live in a similar pocket somewhere of this insecurity. I'm like,
yeah.
Work. I don't know how to do it that way, but I could do it this way.
Yeah.
So can we talk about now, like how, like bringing play to work, and like, have you seen it bring results? Like what changes when you bring play at work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess one of the key, I talked about key myths around play earlier, and the biggest, baddest, gnarliest one for us to work through is this idea of using play and work, because it's, in the best way, in the best case, play is seen as, frivolous, a bit silly, not a great use of time. In the worst way, it's seen as, inappropriate for work. So it's quite this gnarly beast using play at work. We've really got this idea of kind of separate spheres, work and play, they can't mix. And work is all around efficiency and rationalization and profitability. And, that's got us to some great results. But the reality is that play can really transform work for both individuals and organizations. And it's still uncommon, even though a lot of research has shown that bringing this fun and lightness into the work environment really increases creativity and promotes kind of group cohesion. So it's a shame because we are all missing out by shunning play from the workplace. And to answer your question in terms of the results that we've seen by bringing some play into the workplace with our clients, I would say there are kind of 3 key ways that it can help achieve the results that organizations are looking for. And that is increasing kind of holistic resilience in organizations, increasing creativity, which basically every organization needs in this changing landscape, and in encouraging a sense of very authentic connection. So on the resilience point, play's got a very cathartic nature, which can help provide psychological relief and the kind of emotional release of tension by enabling individuals to express frustrations and stress, but in a way that isn't kind of damaging or costly to their organization. So play decreases absenteeism, stress, and physical healthcare costs. And when we've seen people engage in play, it's been shown to lower stress at work. That results in less sick days, in more positive attitudes, lower burnout, and just generally more energy in the work environment. So, show me a workplace that doesn't want that. The second kind of bucket of results that we see is really in creativity. So play is the sort of sister of creativity. It really helps us to develop mental flexibility, divergent thinking, reconfigure ideas and objects and behaviors. And I love like a small activity like reimagining the use of something on your desk. So like this is not a hairband, although you think it is, it's actually a very jazzy kind of VR headset. If you reimagine things just around you, that's building a creative muscle in a really small way, which can help over time to help you reimagine new product ideas or how you can solve your customers' problems, because you're just used to doing these little exercises that invite creativity in. And the third way that we've seen it bring results is all around connection. So when people play together, especially when adults play together, it can transcend the limitations of work roles. And I don't know about you, but I certainly find myself in certain environments, you kind of bring your professional persona or, your mask in a way of kind of how you show up, how you conduct yourself. And by bringing kind of moments of play in, the group, we can feel collectively safer to express and explore ideas and insights that might seem a little bit strange at first. And with our work on clients at Playfilled, we've witnessed how when people play together, we can see, connections being formed in front of our eyes, a sense of belonging, a sense of trust and intimacy, which strengthens relationships and teams. So yeah, a whole a rainbow of amazing benefits awaits with more play, but we have to be kind of brave enough to try it in organizations.
Right. I love that. You're talking about being, brave to show up and be vulnerable in a way, because you're going to look silly, and then, like you said, that mask that we can bring to work of wanting to seem professional and serious, everything has to be so serious. Yeah. And I love the little exercise that you demonstrated with your VR headband there, because it reminds me a bit of, like we say, like with kids, like they do that inherently. Yeah. And it's important to remember that like we were all children at one point. Yeah. We all possess this ability. And it's something that is a learned behavior to stop, unfortunately, in my opinion, and probably you agree. That I just love that it is this inherent thing that we know how to do. And it's about, like you said, like being brave and going back to that playful place. So I just love that. So you also mentioned about how play can like cut across these like dimensions of like differences. Like, you said you bring people together. Can you share about like how that happens or how you've seen that happen?
Yeah, 100%. There's something very biological about play. And I was thinking about this before our conversation, because often Pauline and I, when talking about play, we say it's very human, and it is very human. And as you say, it's within us all. We were all children once, but actually, and Francis has prompted me with this, animals play too. Look out in nature, look at kittens, look at puppies. I mean, as if we need an excuse, but they love to play. So it's actually less about being a human, I think, and more about being a living creature. And the fact that we all have a need to play as part of being alive, a need which is often sadly deeply buried in us, but it's there as a sort of biological drive of life. And yeah, we have found that play can really cut across differences in age, generations, across genders, across nationalities, personality types, all kinds of things. And really we've seen that happen in 2 ways. So the first way is in the act of doing something playful together. So again, just that small exercise I showed just now, small moments like that, it can really connect people in a way that goes beyond the surface level of, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? It just goes to a different place. You know, as you said, we don't like looking silly in front of others as adults generally. That's just a deeply uncomfortable thing for us. So by creating an environment where we can do that in small doses, that really engenders trust between colleagues, and it increases psychological safety in a team where people can trust that they will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, raising questions, raising concerns, or just making a mistake and looking a bit stupid. So it really helps us to take those calculated risks and be vulnerable with each other, as you said, bringing up the idea of vulnerability. Second way we've seen it cut across differences is specifically by using this idea of play preferences. And this is a concept that was coined by Dr. Stewart Brown, an amazing researcher and psychiatrist out in the States. And he identifies what he calls play preferences, which are kind of key ways that we all like to play. And his hypothesis is that there's about 8 kind of ways of play. And this gives us a language around describing what play means to us. And that can help us communicate to others and find points of connection with someone that may be very different from you on the surface, but you find points of connection that you never realized you had. So things like, you know, exploring, maybe you both love travel or learning new things or losing yourself in research, or you might both be creators with a love of design or having your eye for details, restoring things back to former glories, or, you know, I'm a mover. That's one of my key ways of play. And I love seeking out every opportunity to push my body through adventures outside or sports or fitness. And so just by kind of sharing these points of how you like to play, you can find connections with people that may be so different from you on the surface, but it gives you a language to share these. So we've just seen how bringing in little moments of play amongst teams can really create a sense of community that removes boundaries based on individual differences and backgrounds and hierarchies.
Oh, I love that. And I of course, I always love a shout out to the pup, Francis. And you know, something that I've noticed too, like this is my first time being a dog parent. I've always loved animals. And like, I'm very excited. We're both very excited about doing training and like, you know, all this stuff and obedience stuff and tricks. But what's really fascinating that I feel like is related to this is when we work with a trainer and like we're doing training and stuff. And then she's like, okay, like let's take a break and reward the dog with tug of war or play or something like that. So it's like, it's so like, I was like, oh, right. We talk about this, like we need to take breaks during the day because we don't want to get burnout. And it's like, it's the exact same thing. Like I said, it's just like being alive. Like it's good to be focused, but then we need like designated playtime to like free ourselves up so that we can be a better performer. Yeah. And rest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So can you talk about, and this, I feel like it's a good segue, the relationship between play and the future of work?
Yeah, I find this one really, really exciting. I guess since the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, swathes of us have been reevaluating our relationship with work, what is important to us. And there are quite a few trends in these discussions around the future of work that I think intersect with how embracing more play can help us as individuals and organizations. So I guess 3 key trends that I've been noticing. One is around this idea of needing to be kind of learning continuously as we navigate this amount of change. So unlearning old ways of doing things, learning new ways of doing things, new methods and approaches. You know, that's not new, but it's certainly becoming more and more relevant. The pandemic was the ultimate crash course in adopting that learner's mindset that I talked about, and just sitting with the natural discomfort that comes from letting go of the old and assimilating the new. So we're seeing a lot of changes in our workplace, overhauling roles, processes, rethinking behaviors. And so just play helps us learn new methodologies, new practices and teams. And that's one way that leaders can help people just navigate this kind of ongoing changing landscape. The second trend is around how expectations of work are really changing, especially amongst younger generations that are prioritizing this idea of fun and enjoyment in their job searches. And we've seen that they really want a combination of work and play, and they're seeking out organizations that can align with those values. And the motivating and retaining that kind of talent will call for designing engaging and enjoyable working environments. But this goes way beyond the, I think, slightly passé idea now of kind of foosball tables and like bright pink quirky breakout areas. It needs to go beyond that to really engage with this idea of, we want to fulfill our potential. We also want to have, an impact on the world and believe in the purpose of what we're doing. But we also want to weave play into our relationships and our tasks at work to increase that purpose, to increase the connection, and just to drive levels of engagement and motivation, which really, you can feel the absence of it when play is just not welcomed in an environment. And I would say the last kind of trend I'm noticing around the future of work conversations is this idea of, how can we use data, which we're constantly creating and absorbing, to personalize experiences. So play is very personal, as we've been talking about. And we're really curious about how organizations can use data to understand the diversity of their people's play preferences, and then use those insights to create personalized work experience that tap into what motivates individuals, how they like to work, and then use those insights to kind of bring joy and lightness into everyday interactions, such as team meetings. And I think the forward-thinking organizations that really get this will move away from using data to just monitor and react to employee sentiment, towards anticipating kind of what motivates them and what really brings them joy.
Yeah, I love that we're like you said, we're having this complete reevaluation of what work is. And I like the example of like quirky break rooms. Like, that was such a trend. You're absolutely right. If you ever went to any startup
table.
yeah, exactly, kombucha on tap, things like that. You're like, well, that's nice, but is that, I don't know how playful that really gets my brain. But can you talk about so now we're in this time where we have hybrid work environments. So maybe some people are fully remote, some people are going in and out, maybe some employees, some people are fully remote, some people are in there. So how can the inclusion of bringing people together, how can we overcome these, as you said, this new frontier in the workplace? Like, how do we integrate this, and how do we, bring the play together if, let's say, we're in different places?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole shift to flexible working from anywhere policies are amazing in so many ways. I'm a huge fan of that, but a lot of research has shown that people are feeling less connected to their colleagues. Now, connection and inclusion are not the same thing, but it is hard to drive inclusion when people are feeling disconnected. And today we are tending to feel kind of more disconnected at work than ever. However, what's really interesting is that this isn't just a result of the pandemic. There was a large survey conducted by EY, I'm thinking of, back in 2019, which showed that over 40% of respondents, actually in the US, reported feeling physically and emotionally isolated in the workplace. And that group spanned generations, genders, and ethnicities. So it was clear that we're all kind of craving more connection with the people we spend most of our waking time with, which is still work. Now, I guess making kind of inclusion and inclusive behavior a reality in organizations wasn't really happening at pace, or at least easily, before the advent of this hybrid working at scale that you mentioned. And there was already a need to move beyond awareness raising and representation initiatives towards more behavioral changes. But I guess what is a great challenge now is that shift to hybrid, which has made relationships often feel more transactional, and there are fewer opportunities to connect socially or just connect as humans. And I think on video calls, especially, getting to know each other can feel very, very low priority, when there's pressing work to discuss, but it actually becomes even more important in virtual environments. And I think without consciously looking and putting time and energy and investment into creating emotional connection and adopting inclusive behaviors, I think detachment does creep in, and we miss out on creating a very kind of powerful sense of belonging. So I would say, how can we intentionally create environments as leaders in which people feel free to share their knowledge, moving from representation to participation? And I think the most tangible way of doing that, as we all do grapple with hybrid working, is through the creation of virtual and in-person spaces that do invite new practices and conversations where everyone feels able to contribute. And if you think about it, traditional meetings, traditional conference rooms, traditional presentation technologies are actually designed to do the opposite. It's all about deference to the speaker. It's all about conduct, keep quiet if you don't know the answer, only talk if you know you're going to sound like an expert. And I think just inviting these small moments of playfulness do exactly this. They bring something unfamiliar in without being too uncomfortable, which then opens up space for new conversations and new ways of working. So I think the link between play and inclusive behaviors as we do navigate hybrid working is really compelling.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We're just got a couple minutes left. So I'm wondering if you could maybe, for our audience today listening, if there's any, tips you could provide for putting like this practice of play into their life today.
Yes.
A little playful rhyme for you.
Yeah, I love it. Gosh, lyricist. Yes, so many things. I guess the first thing would be just checking in with yourself and reflecting on how do you like to play? Like, do you even know? Are you connected to how you like to play? Some people are so disconnected from this idea of their own way of play because they think as we grow up, I mean, this is me 2 years ago before I kind of really immersed myself in the world of playfulness. But, you grow up and you put play on a shelf, right? You think it's not for you. So a lot of us need to reconnect with the idea of, well, actually, how do I like to play? So identify those play preferences and then make space for them in your life. And a good way of starting that is actually just journaling. So journal for a week or two, track, when did you feel playful? What were you doing? Who are you with? What did you notice about how you felt? So just being mindful about how do you like to play and kind of making space for that in your life. Another thing to do is ask your colleagues how they like to play. That's the one question we were talking about. And it's just, how often is that question asked in the workplace? Very rarely, if ever. But we've seen some amazing conversations emerge from just asking that one question. And I guess one more thing to think about would be experimenting with small changes. So, if you're going to kick off a meeting, you could start by getting up out of your seat, having a stretch as you check in, shake out all your limbs with your colleagues. That's great for counteracting the whole back-to-back calls. Or do a 2-minute grounding exercise, go into pairs, get a piece of paper, grab a pen in your non-dominant hand and draw a terrible portrait of each other, set a timer for 2 minutes. We kick off so many meetings like that, and you just immediately bring laughter in. You're apologizing to each other because it's just so terrible what you've done, and you're both feeling a bit embarrassed. And you start sharing stuff about yourselves that you would never do, without that kind of interaction being invited. So you can just do these small things, and you'll see a huge impact.
Oh, I love that. That is a very playful exercise that I'm definitely going to suggest that we do here at Power to Fly. Love that. So we're out of time, Tzuki. You have a podcast, right? And people can check that out. And also, please share with us other ways we can stay connected with you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Shameless plug. Why Play Works is a podcast that I host with an amazing woman called Lucy Taylor. She also does brilliant things with play and work with her company, Make Work Play. And we hear stories of trailblazers, from play practitioners to academics to organizations, who are all radically reshaping work as play. So Make Work Play, Why Play Works. Check it out to hear, lots more stories of the power of play in the workplace.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tzuki Stewart, for making the time for this playful conversation. I had so much fun. My dog Francis had fun playing with you today too. So thank you for
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care now.